Okay, so down there's two holes. That one there, I think, goes up to this pipe here. That one is the pump, which pumps out the back over there. This is the lint trap, as they call it, and it's all cleaned up now. It had all sorts of black crud in there, and that was all full of black crud. And this was all full of black crud. I threw some bleach in there, in the well down there, to work on that black crud. These are held in with 1/4-inch screws. Pause, please. Okay, so right down there also had some schmutz in it. Blew that out with a water pick. Next thing that's going to happen is the drum's going to go on. I cleaned up all around there, and I'll show what those parts look like in a second. Okay, so putting the drum in. And there was schmutz on the bottom of the drum. We cleaned all that out too. There we go. Okay. Go ahead and hit pause. Okay, so on top of what I'm going to call the axle or the spindle, you've got this white plastic piece. There's a washer here that when you go to clean it up is going to fall out, so make sure you don't lose that. So white plastic piece and washer go on first. Then this goes in. And this was all schmutzed up too. Clean that up. Make sure that's pushed all the way down. And then we got screws that are going to go just there. Screws that go in there. Go ahead and pause. Okay, so these are going into plastic, so you don't want to over torque them. Now, getting this thing out was not easy. So I'm doing this video on the assembly side. Generally, you have a video on disassembly. But basically, what I did is I took these screws out. Then I stood with my foot on the end here. And if you reach under the outside of the drum, there's a nice lip you can grab a hold of. So with my leg inside the washer, I yanked up, holding the axle or the spindle or whatever we want to call that down. And it came free, but wouldn't come all the way out. So I took some penetrating oil and ran it around the axle there. Let it sit for about 30 minutes, but I imagine probably didn't need to wait that long. And then gave it a good yank with my foot in there again, and that took it out. If you don't put something here to hold down, what's going to happen is you're going to pop the tub out of the rod. These balancing rods, support rods. I don't remember what they call these things, but you've got to keep weight on this when you yank up to pull the drum out, or the tub and everything's going to come up together, and that doesn't accomplish anything useful. So when this screw goes in the middle, you got to use Loctite blue. So I am going to do that later, but just mentioning it now for anyone that fast forwards. Okay. Okay, so this goes on next. Just fits in the spline there. Getting that out wasn't too hard. Just took the screw out, pulled up on the edges. I did see if you're having a hard time getting it out, you could grab the side of the drum and yank up a little bit. But once again, don't yank up too much. You're going to unhook your balancing rods. Okay, so I'm using Permatex Premium Strength Thread Locker Blue on this. And getting this thing out was not easy. I had to use an impact gun to get it out. I tried just using my drill, which has impact settings, and that was not enough torque with my just standard Milwaukee drill. So I had to go get what I use for car lug nuts to get it out. So, and of course you have the problem of when you're trying to get this out, the drum wants to spin. In terms of getting the drum out, if you don't use the method that I use of sticking your foot in and pulling up, there are other YouTube videos where people, after they've taken this plastic part off, they put a scissor jack from a car in and put a 2x4 across under the lip here and push it off that way. I was going to use that method if I couldn't get it out the way I got it out, but what I did was quicker and worked fine, so I didn't have to resort to that other method. I don't know what the torque spec for this is. I'm going to assume that it was a bear to get out because of the thread locker and not because it was torqued like crazy. So I'm just going to put as much torque as I can reasonably put on it, just using my ratchet here. So I'm going to assume that's enough. And then finally this little cap goes on here. I don't think there's any magic to it, and I don't think it's waterproof either. There's no O-ring on it or anything like that. So now the all the parts related to the drum are in. So the next thing to go in is the cover that goes on this. I'll get that. Okay, so we have the hose that has to connect here. That's back in this corner here. And it's not too hard to get off, and you just need to take the clamp off of it before you try to remove it. I'll show you that clamp in position once I get the hose on there. Okay, so the hose is all the way up against now. Here's the clamp. So taking it apart is just a matter of squeezing that, pushing it down. It, at least on mine, it didn't have a tendency to fall down to the bottom of the washer. So certainly was concerned that I didn't want it to get away from me because that's a long reach. Had no issues with that. And pushing it off, if you need to push it with a wide flat bladed screwdriver, you could. Always want to try not to flare out the end of the hose though, so avoid that if you can. In terms of what holds this in place, there's a clip, 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 clip. So you want to make sure you don't break those clips when you're undoing this thing. So you just, to get them off, you just kind of stick your fingernails under there and pry out gently. I was not able to figure out a way other than that to get them off. I tried using a putty knife from underneath, but there's so little space in there for your hands, it really didn't work. So now that's all clipped on and that is reconnected. So at this point, we're basically done. Just going to hinge this back down. Now I did have some schmutz under here that I cleaned up some, although looking at it, you wouldn't be able to tell that I did a lot of cleaning in there. There was a little bit of mess there. In terms of how this gets open, I'm sure you already have seen that on the web, but basically you stick a putty knife in under the lip, just push between the two. This clip is holding the sheet metal, so when you push in on it, it goes like that and releases the sheet metal. I don't know what those are for, but, and there's one on either side. For some reason, the one I have on this side binds up more than the other one. So that's how you get this unclipped and hinge it up. There wasn't anything I needed to do in the back other than unplug it and take the water lines off. And oh, make sure you tape the lid. Otherwise, the lid, when you hinge it up, flops on the control and potentially breaks the control panel. In my case, it would have just hit the wall. But tape the lid and then figure out some way to properly support the lid while you work on it. Okay, well, that's the abbreviated version of that. There are longer videos on the web, but sometimes it's nice to have one that just covers all the basics quickly.